Hello there, grade 10s. We're going to talk about cell reproduction. You've already learned about the components of a cell, so let's talk about how they reproduce. So what is cell reproduction? It's when a new cell is produced, which is called a daughter cell, and it's produced by a parent cell. There might be only one parent, or there might be two parents when it comes to cells, and we'll talk about both of those types. The daughter cell might be identical to the parent, or it might be different. Cell reproduction happens through division. The word we're looking for here is division. And so basically the cell splits itself into more than one cell. You'll see a picture of that in a moment. Okay, so why does a cell need to reproduce? There are a few reasons. So number one, another entire organism identical to itself through asexual reproduction to make an identical copy of itself, completely identical to the parent self. It just wants to reproduce itself as an entire organism. And then another sub-reason of this, reason number one, is that, another way it can happen, these are the two different ways it can happen in terms of reproducing itself as an organism. The second way is with another organism into a non-identical new organism, and this is called sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual reproduction. The second reason that a cell might need to reproduce is to grow. So think about, when babies are growing, when they get bigger, but cells themselves don't get bigger. And so they just need to make more cells. If the tissues and muscles and organs and things are going to get bigger, then you just need more cells in order for the larger scale objects to get bigger. And then the third reason is to fix or repair or replace some cells that have become damaged. So basically make a new cell which is in better shape and get rid of the old cell. So we're going to look at a particular type of cell division that takes care of reasons 1A, 2, and 3. So 1A, 2, and 3. The only one we're not really looking at is 1B, which kind of works in a different way. So we're not really talking about sexual reproduction, but we're talking about asexual reproduction, which is when a cell produces an identical copy of itself. So the name for the process here is mitosis. And we're going to go through all the different components of mitosis. So mitosis produces two identical daughter cells from the parent cell. The original parent cell basically splits into two. So it's not like there's no parent cell left over. So the parent cell splits into two daughter cells, and that's all that's left. There's no parent cell anymore. The process of sexual reproduction is called meiosis, which sounds almost identical to mitosis, but it's a different word, and that's covered in senior biology courses. We won't cover that in this course. So here's the cell cycle. Most of the time cells just do their job, and they're just kind of functioning, doing whatever their job is. There are lots of different jobs that cells can be doing. There are, in fact, 210 different types of cells in the human body. Each one has a different role, some of which are extremely specialized and very different from all the other cells. However, once in a while, a cell does its job for a little while, and then every now and then some new instructions come along, and they say, get ready, you're about to divide, okay? So this is what the cell cycle looks like, and these are kind of the steps it goes through. First, the cell receives instructions to divide, and once it receives those instructions, it doubles its DNA, because every cell needs to have DNA. And so if this one cell is going to split into two identical copies, then it needs two copies of the DNA. That's the first thing that happens. So it doubles its DNA and gets ready to divide. And so then it goes through mitosis, and in a moment we'll drill into the details of what mitosis is, but basically the cell begins to divide during the mitosis process. Then there's a period called cytokinesis, which is where the cell divides right after mitosis. And then the new cells grow and keep performing their job, and time goes on, and then maybe a little bit later, each of those daughter cells might get new instructions to divide again, and so on and so on. So how exactly does a cell know when to reproduce? How does it get those instructions? Let's talk about that for a second. So it gets information from different chemical messages that are kind of floating around within the organism. These are indications about how old cells are, if there is damage somewhere, if more cells are required, etc. So cells are kind of constantly getting these messages, but depending on what the messages are, that can trigger the reproduction and the division process. Sometimes a cell will stop the reproduction process if something seems wrong. We'll talk more about this later. Okay, so let's drill into mitosis a little bit more. Remember, mitosis was this arrow, this part of the cell cycle. And everything else is called interphase, but we're not going to talk about interphase. But all you really need to know for now is that interphase is everything except mitosis. Okay, so what is mitosis? What are the different phases that comprise mitosis? So first of all, you have prophase. And this is a picture of a cell. This is the nucleus, and inside the nucleus is some DNA. And so DNA strands were doubled earlier in the cell cycle. Remember, that happened before mitosis started. Let me just go back for a moment. Back here, it says the cell doubles its DNA and gets ready to divide, and this is happening before the mitosis phase. So this has already happened by the time we get into mitosis. So, so the DNA strands are now in pairs in an X kind of shape, which you can see here. It's not a perfect X, but you know it's sort of crossed, and these are called chromosomes, and they're inside the nucleus. You can see there are 4 pairs of chromosomes in this picture anyway. Each chromosome becomes more compact, and then the membrane around the nucleus starts to break down. So that's this boundary around the nucleus. So it's going to start to break down. The DNA is going to escape from the nucleus. Stage 2 is metaphase. You can see something weird is going on with the DNA here. So the chromosomes line up along the middle of the cell. And then the next phase is anaphase. You can see they've kind of split apart. I think you can probably predict why that's happening. Something called the centromere is holding the 2 chromatids, and it splits. The 2 chromatids are pulled apart. Those are sort of the parts of the chromosome. And there are now a new set of daughter chromosomes. So basically, this is one set of chromosomes. This is another set of chromosomes. And they've split into 2 groups. The parent and daughter chromosomes move to opposite sides of the cell, and you can see that. And by the way, let me point out that the shape of the cell has now changed. I don't know if you noticed that, but originally it was a circle, roughly, and it's sort of gotten lengthened. Now, cells aren't perfect circles, but it's sort of a simplification of what it really looks like, but the cell really does sort of get elongated as it's starting to split into 2 cells. Stage 4 is telophase. The chromosomes become thinner. You can kind of see that here, that the depiction of these chromosomes is thinner compared to these ones are thicker. And so new nuclear membrane forms around each new set of chromosomes, which means there's a new nucleus. And you can kind of see that. Like, look at this circle going around the DNA. So that's a new nucleus forming. So we now have 2 nucleuses, or nuclei, in this cell. And you can see that. They're now visible. Cytokinesis, remember, I'm not going to go back to the other slide, but this is the part after mitosis where the cell finally divides after the end of telophase. So you've got the parent cell and the daughter cell. And actually, we would now just call them both daughter cells. So there's now no parent cell. Both of these cells originally came from this cell, but now they're just 2 totally new cells. Well, actually almost. It looks like they're still attached a little bit, but in a moment they're going to be totally separated. And both cells are completely identical in terms of their genetic information, their DNA. And finally, it looks like this. You have 2 daughter cells, and you can see that each one has a nucleus, and that nucleus contains DNA.